Romantic subplots. Almost all books and stories have at least one in them. But how do you write one if you've never been in love? It's the problem I'm running into working on my current work in progress, Project Celine. And so today we're going to study how other authors do it, starting with Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Welcome back to Leatherwingback Productions. I'm Taylor, and here we go on Romantic Subplots.
Now, before I go any further, here is a spoiler warning. If you haven't read this book and its sequel, I'd highly recommend you go do so. I love these books and recommend them to everyone who asks.
Okay, with that out of the way, today we're going to study Kaz and Inej. Related to this, one of my all-time favorite lines from a book is in Crooked Kingdom, which we're not studying today, but we'll get there. So, what is Six of Crows?
First, a brief summary. A magical, industrial era-esque heist story. 6 skilled misfits from the same gang are hired to pull an impossible heist in an unforgiving country. Their prize lies within the Driscoll Fortress, an impenetrable fortress. And believe it or not, there are many romantic or romantic-adjacent subplots going on. We're focusing on my favorite. And who are our characters? Kaz Brecker, Dirty Hands, a lieutenant in the Dregs. He's clever, ruthless, and pragmatic, if not considerably cynical, despite the fact that he is only 17. Oh, did I mention these criminals are all teenagers? Yeah, they're all teens. Anyway, Inej Gafa. I'm relying on the pronunciation guide. Have patience, please. And then I also checked the show, and they say it differently. So I'm going with Inej because that's how I've always said it. Inej Gafa. Kaz's spy and right hand, also known as the Wraith. Both have trauma. Both are exceptionally skilled. On to the study. Okay, now on to the actual study. So when I first started this, I was going to follow the layout in Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes, but it put a block in my brain and I struggled until I changed my approach. However, it seems a good read if you want to write romance novels. Switching tactics, I went through Six of Crows, searching through for any mentions of Kaz and Inej in their viewpoints as well as the others. Like any relationship, the two need to meet first. In this case, Inej and Kaz met 2 years prior to the start of the book, when Kaz freed Inej from the menagerie and recruited her to the Dregs. Now, being at the start of this book, we see them interacting in normal criminal business. He relies on her and trusts her, but has convinced himself that she is simply a good investment. To say he trusted Inej would be stretching the point, but he could admit to himself that he'd come to rely on her. It had been a gut decision to pay off her indenture with the menagerie, and it had cost the Dregs sorely. Perhaskell had needed convincing, but Inej was one of the best investments Kaz had ever made. Inej, for her part, doesn't believe he could love her and is trying to keep her own heart in check. Kaz was not a giddy boy smiling and making future plans with her. He was a dangerous player who was always working an angle. Always, she reminded herself firmly. They continue like this for the beginning chunk of the story, which in the meantime is getting a job, planning an impossible heist, and gathering crew members. During this, Kaz even snaps at Inej, saying she could be replaced for the job. She silently swears to make him apologize before the ship sets out.
Then all hell breaks loose.
There's an ambush at the docks. Inej makes to buy the others' breathing room, which saves their lives, but she gets horribly injured in the process. Rather than be captured, she prepares to end her own life, but surprise! There's Kaz scooping her up and carrying her to the ship. There's a sweet, well, maybe not sweet, but I love it nonetheless, exchange here where she tells him she doesn't want to die, and he fights to keep her awake. But just before she passes out, she tells him to apologize. Now, this section here is when we as the reader get clear confirmation that Kaz does in fact care deeply for Inej. Not only did Kaz come for her, which would have been great on its own, but we later learn he took out all the men that had cornered her, and we witness his fury against Uman, who's the one that actually hurt Inej.
Side note. There's something about a man flying into a rage on behalf of the woman he loves that just hits so well. I believe this was the first point when I was fully into them as a pair, and from this point on, Any cute or sweet or funny moment between or about them turned me into a giggling schoolgirl. That is all.
Anyway,
The focus shifts back to the main plot with smaller moments here and there, including how we learn Kaz didn't make her get the dregs tattoo because he wouldn't be the one to mark her again. These moments are interwoven with the main plot and bits of backstory.
him boosting her up during the fight in the snow, her recognizing and understanding in the prison cart when Kaz passed out, him feeling a pang of panic as they are separated in the prison, his memories of her helping him stay conscious while they're being processed, his concern for her when she suggests she and Nina infiltrate as members of the menagerie.
Before the crew implements their new plan, the two get to have a tender moment together where he allows her to cup his cheek. They're making progress, but Inej recognizes the walls are still there. Kaz recognizes the glow of purpose about her. They go their separate ways, and we jump back into the story. Later, as Kaz is drowning, his thoughts turn to Inej. We learn of his first moment of falling in love with her as she sat on his windowsill. He made her laugh, and then he thought to himself,
If he could have bottled the sound and gotten drunk on it every night, he would have. It terrified him.
and again, it is his thoughts of Inej that keep him going.
She had to live. She had to have made it out of the ice court. And if she hadn't, then he had to live to rescue her.
After which he can't hide his grin when Inej and the others break free of the ice court. Now we're in the last part of the book. We're past the climax, kind of in that falling action section. We need some kind of closure with the subplots. So we come to Kaz and Inej talking on the ship. Inej tells Kaz of the purpose she's found, which would take her away from Ketterdam. Something to note here is earlier he said it would be good for her to leave, that she was always too good for the barrel. But now he catches her hand and says,
Stay, he said, his voice rough stone. Stay in Ketterdam. Stay with me. She looked down at his gloved hand clutching hers. Everything in her wanted to say yes, but she would not settle for so little, not after all she'd been through. What would be the point? He took a breath. I want you to stay. I want you. You want me, she turned the words over. Gently she squeezed his hand. And how do you want me, Kaz? He looked at her then, eyes fierce, mouth set. It was the face he wore when he was fighting. How will you have me, she repeated. Fully clothed, gloves on, your head turned away so our lips can never touch? He released her hand, his shoulders bunching, his gaze angry and ashamed as he turned his face to the sea. Maybe it was because his back was to her that she could finally speak the words. I will have you without armor, Kaz Brecker, or I will not have you at all.
What a fantastic confession scene. Everything has been building up to this point. It's not a full resolution. We do still have another book to read, but it wraps up enough of their uncertainties that we feel alright moving on. And then Van Eyck betrays them. And while Kaz partially predicts this, he can't predict Inej getting captured. Temporarily stranded with part of his crew, that love rage returns.
Inej had wanted Kaz to become someone else, a better person, a gentler thief. But that boy had no place here. That boy ended up starving in an alley. He ended up dead. That boy couldn't get her back. I'm going to get my money, Kaz vowed, and I'm going to get my girl. Inej could never be his, not really, but he would find a way to give her the freedom he'd promised her so long ago. Dirty Hands had come to see the rough work done.
Now we're setting up for the next part of the book, and suddenly I'm wondering if this is a heist novel with a romance subplot, or a romance novel with a heist subplot. Well, we started with a question, or at least a concept of a question. How did Leigh Bardugo write her romantic subplot, and how can we learn from it? Let's see if we can summarize.
First, establish a connection. Kaz and Inej work closely together in the dregs. Second, create tension or division between them. Kaz denies feelings of love, Inej doesn't believe he can love. Third, break the first barrier. Inej nearly gets killed, Kaz rages. Fourth, little moments of affection. The cart, Kaz's panic, his concern about the menagerie disguise. Fifth, one or two bigger moments. The tender moment on the roof, Kaz's thoughts of Inej while drowning. Sixth, revelation or confession. Kaz's confession on the ship and Inej's boundaries.
Can I apply this to my current book? Yes, I can, even if not quite in the same way. And what about you? Think you can apply this to your stories? Thank you so much for watching. If you have ideas for other concepts or stories you would like me to look into, go ahead and comment below. Hit like and subscribe so you can see when that comes out. Also, I will be revealing the title for my current project, Project Celine, in the next few days. So keep an eye on my socials if you would like to check that out. Until next time, keep writing. Bye.